Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. My name is Naeem Badiou Zaman. I work with Strive UK, a British Muslim advocacy group that is committed and working very hard towards creating an equitable and justice society. As an organization, today we are pleased to welcome everyone who has joined us today on the special premiering of this documentary on the Gujarat program titled Gujarat Unhealed. Our objective today as an advocacy group that continues to organize events that educates communities about the evils of fascism, of racism, and Islamophobia in particular, by organizing events such as this, details of which I will tell you in due course, webinars and seminars that invite community leaders, intellectuals, authors, and also students, telling people and how to be engaged in advocacy active plans, like, for example, being part of protests that are organized in the UK against discriminatory laws like the citizenship laws in India in the recent past. There are several social projects that we are also part of. The event today that we have in the premiere of this documentary is to show the world about the depravity of the program, not that there is another type of what happened in Gujarat in the year 2002. There are several adjectives and a few descriptors. One, it was horrible. Two, it was evil. It was calculated. And the worst of it all was state complicity. It was not even state complicity to cover it up, but it was state complicity to actually brag about it and even make it an electoral plank. And those who were behind it are now in power. Our objective today through the documentary is to tell you what happened and what transpired, a lot that you may know, but a lot more that we want you to know. I would like to first introduce the person who is behind the creative process of the documentary. Shaheen Abdulla is the creative editor of Maktub. Shaheen has directed also a documentary on the NRC issue in Assam, In a State of Doubt. And the documentary received wide comments and discussions across the country. In 2020 June, Shaheen won the Delhi Minorities Commission Award in the print and electronic media category. A postgraduate in convergent journalism from Jamia Millia Islamia in New Delhi, Shaheen's work has appeared in the Quint, Dalit Camera, the Caravan Magazine, Vice India, Al Jazeera, and the Washington Post. Also very important, in addition to us viewing and also seeing the documentary, is to understand as members of the diaspora, what is it that we can do effectively and consistently and with perseverance in actually amplifying the voice of those who are the voiceless and victims of this crime, and also to create affirmative action to bring justice, or at least the calls for justice. And today with us, we have someone very special who I will introduce you first, is Rasheed Ahmed Sahib, who is currently the executive director of the Indian American Muslim Council. He was its co-founder when it was established in 2002, and later its past president. He sits on the Dean's Council of Advisors of Muslim Philanthropy Initiative of the Lilly Family School of Philanthropy at the Indiana University. He is a board member of the Center on Muslim Philanthropy and co-founder and past president of the US India Policy Institute. I think we can all take a minute to reflect on what we've just seen now and try and understand the enormity of the evil that was unleashed on the people in Gujarat, which the state made no efforts even to cover up, but actually are very proud and continue to use it as a template and even as a threat in their electoral campaigns to date. I'm going to now invite our first speaker, Shaheen, to speak to us about the documentary and about his experiences from ground zero.
Thank you, name. Like I saw it again today. Like I was busy with like in India we are having elections coming up, and I have been working behind elections for the last couple of weeks. So I'm on the road right now, and I happen to see it again now, and I feel like I have done a lot of injustice towards the film itself because. Uh, Let me be frank. I went to Ahmedabad for only 2 days because like the next day I had to come back to Delhi, and Delhi program stories were piling up because of the anniversary. We had to commemorate and do the work of it. One of the things is that I was 7 years old when Gujarat happened, and at that point of time I was too young, but still I knew that there was a guy called Narendra Modi, and he's such a monster. He killed a lot of people, and he did all this heinous crime. And the whole world had that conviction that he was behind all this. But uh, people forget nowadays. People are only talking about the bad policies that Narendra Modi has taken. Like it's about the price hike. It's about farm laws. It's about CAA. But initially, how can a person who have done this massive violence, and how can he be even considered to be the prime minister of India? That is a question that haunts us for a long time. How can people just even when you talk about Ashoka University and Pratap Mehta and all, he was somebody who said no, we have to move on. And who has this burden to move on? These people have lost everything, who lost their livelihood, their life also. Like with such kind of violence, when you recall what Rupa Modi was saying, that uh, after the bodies were burned and charred into ashes, it was taken back. It was taken, and they made a ring outside Ehsan Jaffe's house because people were taking refuge inside Ehsan Jaffe's house. And that kind of violence, even after violence, they wanted to show that the people who survived it, there was showing something to the people who survived it also. It's like we are we can do this, and we will have that immunity that uh, it is accepted by the people. It's accepted by the state that for us to do this kind. So I don't know how to convey this pain. Before I was born, like since the day I was born, I had to have the pain and the burden of the wounds of Babri Masjid. By 7 years old, I had this pain and wounds of Gujarat. If you move on, you look at all this violence. You try to recollect, you try to come out with a language to speak out to the people. See, this is happening, and these are the people behind it. You can't let them go. You can't just move on. You can't just let them erase those memories and these people sacrifice. So again, coming to the documentary, it was an attempt to recollect what was happening, how people were feeling about it. uh, Shweta Bhatt is over there. Shweta Bhatt is talking about her husband, who is Sanjeev Bhatt, who made a lot of sacrifice. He is in jail for last 2 years because of he deposited against Narendra Modi and Amit Shah. So people like them, who had to make the sacrifice. Uh, the 2 days after doing this documentary, like doing the shoot and coming back to Delhi, I was just trying to understand how much we have changed. In Gujarat, we had a Nanavati Shah commission. At least for the sake of a commission, there was a Nanavati commission. There was whistleblowers like Harin Pandya and Sanjeev. But when you come to Delhi, there's no whistleblower. There is no accountability. There's no judicial inquiry. We have lost all of it. I don't know why we call ourselves a democracy even now, because like even after these heinous crimes have been repeated. When you talk about Nazis and Germany, after a Holocaust, people people came back to their senses and they were like, we have done something more. They were ready to apologize. They
Atone.
were ready to change. This is not happening in Indian society. We are trying to move on. We are just trying to erase that memories of the bloody Muslim massacres that happens each and every time periods. And then again, we would say like we have to move on. There will be better days coming. We can regain something in the near future. But that near future is not coming back to us, and that's the reality we are facing. We don't want that. The people are talking about. We want to get back that India. We want to uh, uh, get back that India that was in the Nehru and India. So like in 1950s or 1960s, which was the prosperous time of India. But it was bloody for us. We don't want that back. We want something new. We want something somewhere we can live with dignity without fear of losing our life and livelihood and our loved ones. That's what we want to talk about. That's why I don't know how much this is going to impact you, but the film itself have escalated this uncertainty in a for me myself. I think so. I don't know what I'm trying to convey, but I think people who have seen it could get a glimpse about it, and they can think about how to counter this hate.
Shaheen, I think you should accept it was and it will be never easy to do this. And it is something that we understand and we appreciate. What I also important is what we've also listened to the conversations that were there in the documentary. And a few of the themes that continue to stick out is the word called moving on, the word called victimhood, and of course, state complicity. The reason why they're all connected is because one, as you mentioned, the examples of the Holocaust and the genocides, where people actually were ashamed of such a shameful chapter in their history, and they try to atone and also mourn. Here it is not only is it vulgar, but also perverse in how it was used as this calling card or pride in actually the right wing's agenda. So I think you are completely within your rights to feel the way that you're feeling now in the frustration in being able to tell the story in its complexity and its entirety. But I hope today we will start that effort in trying to reach out again and show that this is a chapter of our history that we need to head on look at and also understand. So thank you very much for showing this today, Shane. Can you also tell us the names of those who collaborated with you on this documentary?
Yeah, so Heba Ahmed from JNU, she was the person who gave me a sketch about who to speak to, how to go about this documentary. So I should thank her in the first place. Then it was the people in Gujarat. There was this person called Asif. Like there's a 2-day trip, and there was a curfew at night, so there was no stoppage for lunch, or there was no refreshment or nothing. Like we were doing back-to-back interviews, and this guy called Asif, who is a local, he had to literally go on a hunger streak with me for the whole day. Then I had Shakil Ahmed. Shakil Ahmed is the first convener of APCR, one of the legal advocacy group in India, and he was the former president of Jamaat Islami Gujarat. He gave an insightful idea of how Muslim organizations face the genocide. There was Siddiq Prakash, Father Siddiq Prakash, who gave an idea about how civil society helped in rehabilitation and relief works and compiling data. He's also working with CPJ. Then we have victims like Rupa Modi, the rest, Fatima Bibi, like who had to witness and who had to sacrifice their families in this in the genocide. Rupa Modi's story is like very it is still very painful that she's still trying to she still believes that her son is alive, and she's still searching for the son, even though after 7 years the law says that after 7 years if a person is missing, he will be declared as dead, but she still believes that her son is alive and he had run away. So even 2 years back, she was visiting all the states like Karnataka, Kerala, and all, searching for clues to find her son, Adar. Rupa Modi, because her name was Modi, and just after the genocide, she changed her name. It was Modi, and she changed it to Mody. Because like even even having the same surname was haunting her. That uh, she gave this detailed account of what happened in the coming days. She was talking about how even the Kavsevaks who went to Godhra, and where the whole thing started, the initial the triggering point, Godhra incident. She gave a lot of insight into how VHP played its role into stirring up and instigating the whole violence, or the whole episode of Gujarat genocide. Then there was Sheda, but she is very kind. She like we have met a few times before. Also, she welcomed me home. It was very warm to be with her and her family, who had made a lot of sacrifice. And I think that's it. Those were the people who.
No, we just wanted to
along.
understand the context. We were very keen to know. I knew this was a huge thing, and we were very interested in knowing the people that were helping on this project. But thank you very much. What I'll do now is I'm just going to go on to Rasheed Ahmed Saib. I'm going to ask him a few things. As soon as he is done with the time that he wants, what we'll do is we'll run a small panel of both of you at the same time. There will be a question and answer session. I am going to encourage everyone on the call today to please, if you'd like, type in the questions. We will try to answer as much as we can. What I'd like everybody to remember, especially those who are outside the country and are the diaspora, today we have heard from someone on the ground and who has spoken directly to the survivors and the victims of what happened and everything after that, and the aftermath. And now we're now also going to listen to a very, very important member of the diaspora who will share with us in his own words what we as members of the diaspora, as conscientious citizens of the country, as those who continue to have loved ones in the country, can do effectively, impactfully, and very, very efficiently in amplifying the calls and the voices for justice. Rasheed Ahmed Saib, over to you. Can you please share us your experiences in actually driving the way forward?
Hello, everybody. Assalamu alaikum. Brother Naeem, you're asking me to share specifically about the Modi visa or the overall efforts?
I would think that would be a very interesting starting point, so that those who are not aware of it can now be a lot more clearer, and then go on to, in general, what is it that we can do?
I'll get to right from the how it started, but I certainly can't cover over it was about 6 weeks of campaign. I can only go very high level. Modi was invited to speak at a conference held by Asian Association, Hotel Owners of Asian Association here in the United States. It's a large organization that is that constitutes the membership of many hotels. As you may know, that people from Gujarat, one of the business they are very active are owning hotels and primarily what in US is called motels, that is mostly situated on the highways and all that for people to stay overnight and then move on with the journey. So they are very active member of that organization, and not just from people from Gujarat in India, but Gujarati descent from South Africa and other countries. So Modi was invited to speak, and when we came to know, it was 6 weeks before that, and uh, at that time, I was the vice president of Indian American Muslim Council, and the president was Sheikh Ubaid, and there is another gentleman you may know, Biju Matthew. He runs India Civil Watch International now. I happened to be in New York for some other business, and me and Sheikh Ubaid and Biju Matthew met in a restaurant for a dinner, and we talked about it that Modi is coming. Is there anything we can do? It's only 6 weeks. He already has the visa. What can we do? That was kind of conversation. Then over an hour and a half conversation, we decided that what we need to do, what we can. What happens is not in our hands. It's in somebody else's hands. So what should be the message? What should be the goal? So we said our primary goal is educating Americans and the world who Modi is and what he has done. That was the primary goal. But we also wanted to set a much higher goal, that goal would be achieved, as effectively as possible. If he actually gets his visa denied and he doesn't come, then that becomes the news, and that would be the educating aspect of it, that we don't care Modi comes to US and does his shopping in Macy's or stays in the motel. That was not our concern. What we wanted to do was use this opportunity to educate Americans and the world who Modi is. So our primary purpose was educating about Modi. So we said, okay, we will, whether he gets a visa or not, we will do our best, but at least in the 6 weeks period, we will start getting, educating people. That's how we started. And then when we announced, or when we started working on it, we started talking to our partners and allies and asking anybody who can join this campaign. Gradually, we had about close to 50 organizations and groups who joined our campaign, which we call the Coalition Against Genocide. The website is still up. You can go and check it out, coalitionagainstgenocide.org. And it's from IMC perspective, it was not for us a Hindu-Muslim issue, so it was more for a human rights issue. So we invited and asked and requested and pursued anybody who can help us, from Amnesty International to Human Rights Watch to any small group that may be concerned and working about it, or even individuals or journalists or anybody who can help us. And it was a 6 months campaign. How With what we can tell is what IMC has done and what IMC's partners we know have done. It was tremendous work, literally 24/7 because of the time difference between East Coast and West Coast. Some of IMC volunteers would work. When they finish, they go to bed already. You know, the other coast is working. So it was literally kind of 24/7 hour work in the sense. But what was what we came to know later on, or we had begun to learn even before his visa was denied, that a whole lot of people have caught on to this idea of denying Modi a visa, which we may or may not even know who all were they. It was a massive campaign, but uh, what also it taught us is that you have to have some existing relationships. You need to know people who are doing similar work to be able to reach out. If we didn't know the right people ahead of the time, we could not have reached out within 6 weeks. When Gujarat 2002 programs happened, when IMC was established, the first thing we did was in the next year, in 2003, we organized a national large conference in which we had about 26 speakers, experts, some from India, even from UK, and many from US, from different backgrounds, different faiths, from academia to religious leaders to activists to everybody. So that actually was that kind of relationship, that kind of knowledge we had, which we started building after 2002. And then 2003, we did a national conference in Santa Clara, California. Then again in 2004, we did again another national conference in Chicago, Illinois. So with these two conferences, and in between we had worked, we reached out to many people from same perspective. That helped us leverage all those relationships to be able to mount a campaign of that magnitude, and it helps. So the point here is we shouldn't wait for something to happen to trying to reach out and organize. We should continue to organize, build relationships so that if it needed, you can immediately use it. Otherwise, it's too late. That's what the one lesson. Second lesson is that we need to focus more on education. We all talk, the rest of the world, even Muslim community talks about education is critical. The education that is critical is not just about something which provides somebody a living wage, just who gets the education, gets a job, not just that education. We need to have a whole comprehensive education about every aspect of the life, including about entities and systems that has direct impact on your life, like government, policies. We also need to learn about the government. We also need to learn about how the policies are made and who makes it and how one can influence it. So that part of the education we don't focus. That I think one of the lesson I learned personally was we need to have all kinds of education. I think that was kind of high level. I think that should give you some sense. Yeah.
Yes, it is. And I quite hear you very clearly, Rasheed Saib, because I think quite a few of the things that you mentioned was actually, if I go in the order of reverse, was when you said about education, you spoke about civic consciousness and civic responsibility, trying to understand how institutions work, how government policy works, and also having an advocacy bent of mind where there's a lot of activism. It was interesting. You also spoke about networking and creating allies and reaching out to people who will continue to be useful. What I'd like to do is I'm going to ask Shaheen a very quick question about the documentary about was it, but I'd like to come back to you immediately after Shaheen just to ask you uh, what was the most surprising thing? For example, when you reach out to allies, you have an expectation that so and so organization will help you. But if you can share with us, some of the pleasantly surprised experiences where this is not to say that they don't want to help, but you were also very warmly surprised by the level of interest that they showed, which should be a lesson for us that there is no ally that is small. All allies are useful. So I'll come back to you in just a minute, if you may. Shaheen, I wanted to ask you about this in particular. In the documentary, one of the things that I have also learned is when you speak to people in the right wing, they talk about um, this is a spontaneous reaction and retaliation to an unprovoked attack in Godhra. So for those who are not very crass or crude about their support for the genocide, the ones who are polished, they talk about, it's a very normal reaction. What actually happened from what you've learned, Shaheen, that actually happened at Godhra? Can you shed some light on this?
Yeah. So again, like I'm taking accounts from a lot of people over here. So the uh, the near truth account is that there's a forensic report from the Gandhinagar Institute, Forensic Institute. It says that the train with Karseviks who was going to Godhra, who was going to Ayodhya, where the Babri Masjid was demolished, and they were planning to build the Ram Mandir. So people were visiting Ayodhya, and they were coming back. These were Karseviks who were, who was part of this army which wanted to demolish and want to rebuild this, wanted to build Ram Mandir. So they were coming back, and at the railway station, at Godhra railway station, these people, they came out. So it was filled with Karseviks, the volunteers of Hindutva militant groups, and they were they had a scuffle with Muslim vendors. That's what every account says, that there was a scuffle with the Muslim vendors at Godhra railway station, and they were moving, and somebody pulled the chain. So when they pulled the chain, the train stops, and there was people from the Muslim ghettos. They were throwing stones at the coaches, and people from inside, they were throwing these molotovs, fireballs from inside the trains. So they were having a kind of a tension over there. And according to the forensic reports, that is reliable, and that is a near truth what we know. At coach number 72, if I remember, I don't remember the seat number. Coach number 6, and it was 72. As far as I remember, they say that there was 60-liter a bottle with a white opening, which triggered the fire. So if you look at the photographs of this uh, train burning, nothing happened from outside. The burning happened from inside, and it was packed with Karseviks. So if a train is packed with Karseviks, and it is already an inside job, that's what we can conclude. That is the best possible conclusion we can come out with. And one interesting thing that I came across is that Rupa Modi is a Parsi woman, so she doesn't have to take a side of Muslims, obviously. She told this interesting thing that, some of the people, so usually when Karseviks are they are gathered and taken to Ayodhya, they just give their names, casually they give their names, and they go to Ayodhya and they come back. But this particular time, they were asked their address and their photographs when they when they were boarding the train to Ayodhya. And when the burning happened, when the tragic burning happened, and 56 people were killed in the Godhra train fire, the next day, these photographs, which was given to VHP people, it appeared on the it appeared on the posters, it appeared on the newspapers, and there was one of the other person survivor, one of the other survivor told us that uh, the newspapers were saying that it's blood for blood, we have to take blood back. And incidentally, the next day, the bodies were not given back to the families. It was given to the VHP, Vishwa Hindu Parishad, the Milton Hindu outfit. And there was a parade in Ahmedabad. From Godhra to Ahmedabad, there was a parade, and all kind of instigating thing, all kind of instigating speech were given. And we remember the Capitol riots, and how Trump gave an instigating speech. Same sort of a speech was given by Narendra Modi on that day, which is included in the documentary, so that it is well documented. Because I think other people are not going to use it after one point of time. They will try to erase these things. That's why I used it in the documentary also. He said that this is a heinous crime and it will be avenged, and that's what happened. The killing went on for weeks. Whatever you talk about Godhra, and even the government, the Gujarat government, which was led by Narendra Modi, concluded within a day or within hours that it was a terrorist attack by Muslims, which was not proved. And it was such a hostile situation, so they knew that this has to happen, and they had some sort of an intelligence or some sort of an idea that this is going to happen in the coming days. So that's a reliable accounts we have. One is from Rupa Modi, who she spoke with some of the people, the Karsevak people, like the families of the people who were killed in the Godhra fire accident. And these are the reports, the reports by then Railway Ministry. And but Nanavati Commission came out with a very different report. But later we came to know that Nanavati Commission was complicit, and they were siding with the government, and they have shared all the secret deposition made by Sanjeev Bhatt and other people to the to Modi's allies and Amit Shah, which has came out afterwards, like Tushar Mehta, who is now the Solicitor General. He was mailed all this deposition, and he was drafting the argument and so on. Like there's a chunk of cover-ups that happened afterwards through you know through bribery, through extrajudicial killings, and all sort of things. Because even the cover was so brutal. We don't know what really happened in Godhra, but this is the near truth that we have.
So clearly, the intent was to provoke, and to provoke from the very beginning. It seemed very, very planned, and as was mentioned in the documentary, there was a sense of evil meticulousness in the way that it was done. What I also want to ask you, Shaheen, very shortly after I've spoken to Rasheed Ahmed Saab, is what about now? What is going on? And this is something that we can talk about a little later, but what is it that is going on now at the levels of government and the state to ensure that this truth continues to be suppressed, the community continues to be demonized, and activists like yourself are continues to be hounded? What is happening now, so that we understand the scale of things? And I'm going to come back to you in a minute now to get your take on this. Rasheed Ahmed Saib, back to you now, as we've discussed a little earlier. And I'm very keen to understand, in your workings with reaching out to allies and other organizations in your advocacy work, what was it that surprised you in terms of support?
Several things, but I think I want to choose a couple of things that surprised me. There are many, but what I want to share is that how little, if any, knowledge beyond Indians or people beyond Indian subcontinent had about Indian Muslims, especially Americans, American politicians, American other influencers. They had little to no idea about Indian Muslims. Many did not even know that there are Muslims in India. It probably goes to show the partly their own ignorance, but I think it is primarily a failing of Indian Muslims that they have Indian Muslims, as you know, Brother Naeem and others on this call, that anything happens to anywhere in the world, especially in the Muslim world, Indian Muslims have spoken up and even marched on the streets and protests. But the Indian Muslims don't realize, at least in India, maybe now they do a bit more than before, that rest of the world, even Muslim world, doesn't know much about Indian Muslims. So if somebody does not know a particular community, even if that community is suffering or even decimated, they can't identify it because they just don't know that they had existed. So I think what Indian Muslims need to do, especially who are not in India, who are living outside India, they need to educate, starting from their neighbors, from their local politicians to their federal politicians to their media, that who Indian Muslims are, what is their contributions to India, and what is their state of affairs in current day, so that that education, when they see something, when somebody tells them there is something happened to in India, primarily to Indian Muslims, they can relate. Otherwise, the first question in their mind is, oh, what is Indian Muslims? I thought they all left to Pakistan. Are there Indian Muslims? How many are they? They don't even know that there are 200 million Muslims in India. So I think
one of the largest populations in the world.
So primary responsibility of Muslims living outside the world is to educate
outside
about
India,
themselves, where they are, and how many, whom Indian Muslims are, and their state of affairs. That would, I say, is the biggest job we have, and that can be done very easily, because it's not like somebody have to write a book on Indian Muslims. It's not like somebody have to write a book on what Indian Muslim contribution are there. It's not like that somebody have to write a book and talk about the state of affairs of Indian Muslims. It's all out there. Instead of talking more about it on our WhatsApp groups and all kinds of things, we need to talk about it beyond Indian Muslim bubble. We're just talking to us is not going to help. I think we need to get out of our own bubble and talk to others about Indian Muslims' affairs.
Okay. Rasheed, there's one thing that I wanted to ask, which was, and we'll quickly come back to you. We'll just follow up on the question that we've asked Shaheen. But what I wanted to ask you is, for a advocacy group like ourselves, and a lot of people who are on the call today who are also parts of groups and movements, what sort of practical, easy to start today things that can be done in reaching out to local governments, local policy makers, some practical tips that you have learned in the work that you have done, not only for the revocation of the visa, but also throughout. If you can give us some practical tips that we can start today, that we need to start planning for tomorrow, Something like that would actually be very useful. What I'll do now is I'll just go back to Shaheen when I had posed a question to Shaheen about what is it that the government or the state is actually doing now to, I know there are reports about such activists being hounded now, trying to suppress this, the version, the truthful version of events again. Shaheen, can you give us some light on that too, please?
Yeah. So one of the greatest thing is that we have to have a memory of, like, we don't even, like, even though some data were collected by Shakil Ahmed Saab and later by T. and Father Cedric Prakash, all these people, these data are not available to the general public. We don't know the names. And what happens is that, like, gradually the state narrative, the narrative from the government is something that we rely on. The numbers change. The Muslim organizations argue that more than 2,000 people have been killed and around 500 people were missing. But the new data, like the data we rely on, government data, say that only 700 something Muslims died and 200 something Hindus died. So we still don't know what are the numbers, and the data we have is not archived properly. We don't have a memory of it. Like, maybe it is impossible to do it in India right now, but at least outside India somewhere, even if strong, if something that that people can relate to. Okay, when they see it, okay, we have to remember Gujarat. That kind of a memory, like archiving the memory, is not happening in India. So with the data, we have troubles, to archive it, and even to do a work like this, to make a documentary. People are telling me, don't do this because you have to play the longer innings. You don't have to go to Gujarat right now. You can do it all over Zoom, or you can make a explainer with graphics and all, but don't go to Gujarat at this point. Because it is port bonded. As you can see, when I was walking on the street, it was all the new Karsevaks, I mean the BJP volunteers outside, because municipal polls were happening at the days which I was in town. So it was kind of hostile, but maybe sometimes it has become an adventure for me, because I had this experience a couple of times. So that is the first primary thing that comes into my mind. And the second thing is that, yeah, people are getting arrested. People are, people who try to go, like the colleague and, somebody like me who is Siddiq up and have been arrested for him traveling to Hathras, where Dalit girl was raped and killed. So he was captured, he was detained, and it was an arbitrary arrest. After that, he was charged with UAPA, the draconian law in India. So it's very hostile to work over here, even the bare minimum to tell the truth, which is there for, is out there. Like, even to say that, it's kind of tough to even do that. But I think one of the important things that we have to do, like, people are asking about what is the plan of action and all. We have to have an intelligence system inside India, or like in an offset place somewhere outside India. We need to find a way to foresee these violence. And I think so it can be done with all the new data, big data, data analysis softwares we can use, because most of this violence, like not the Gujarat violence, but Delhi violence, and what happened afterward in West Bengal and lately in Madhya Pradesh, before the violence happening, they're talking about it in the social media, in Twitter especially. If we try to track this thing, and if we can anticipate, if we can collect these data and profile these people, and we can foresee this violence, and we can sabotage, we can whistleblower, we can call out, this is going to happen in this place, we need protection, or something, that we can make an outcry. That is something that I think is the best way to resist or delay the genocide that is happening, that is going in India right now. people like some people will go to jail. There'll be a human cost, there'll be a human toll for the resistance, which is obvious. People are really insignificant in the movement. Yes, it was friends, it was family, it was near close buddies and all who went to jail and who are still in jail. But we are ready for all of that. We are all in sweat, blood, and age, uh, life. Everything is there at stake. But we want to fight this out. We don't want to live without dignity in this country anymore.
Point well taken, Shaheen, and God bless you and your efforts, and Rasheed Saib also, the efforts that you're doing. Rasheed Saib, if you recall, what I'm very keen to know is, so there are actually two questions. One is, of course, the practical tips that advocacy organizations like us and quite a lot of people on the group that they can do today and from now onwards in actually reaching out to local governments, policymakers, people of influence. That's one. And the second one is a question that has actually come from on the chat is there a role for us, the diaspora, in actually mobilizing the International Court of Justice in its pursuit against those who perpetrated this violence?
The second question is, there are some, when it comes to International Court Justice, India is not the signatory of it, so it doesn't fall into the jurisdiction. Second is that, nevertheless, there are opportunities that that diaspora can make an effort to get heard in the international legal system. But what it will take is your answer to your first question. That is, we have to make it a human rights issue. We have to make it a religious freedoms issue first, wherever we are living, to our own local politicians, local elected offices, local interfaith organizations, local civil society. We have to make that case first in our neighborhoods, in our backyards, in our cities, in our countries. And when that enough of that happens, then even international legal system or international bodies will begin to see that this is something we perhaps need to look into it. And even if it doesn't fall into the legal structure, like anybody else, like any system, they can always find a way to talk about it. There's always, they can include it in the agenda, but it can't happen. It just can't happen. Somebody goes on a helicopter and lands in a International Court of Justice and ask them to hear our case. It won't happen that. It has to become an issue locally enough in different countries, in different places, that then it will get an effort. It will get an attention. So it will start from locally. And also, I think, if you, for lack of better word, naturally, if a Palestinian Muslim doesn't know about Indian Muslim issues, or an Egyptian Muslim doesn't know about Indian Muslim issues, or a Bosnian Muslim doesn't know about Indian Muslim issues, if we are only talking to Indian Muslims or some secular Indians, it's not going to help. We need to educate everybody about Indian Muslims or India in general, what's happening there, because this is beyond Indian Muslims now in India. This is about clear genocide. When we had named our coalition against genocide, there were a lot of remarks. You guys are fringe, you are becoming an extreme, this is not genocide and all that. But
there are people who refuse to accept it as genocide.
Yes. And moving forward now, even couple of years back, there is an organization, a global organization called Genocide Watch. You can Google it, it'll see Genocide Watch. It is run by an expert he studies genocide everywhere in the world, historically current, and potentially where it could happen. He already have listed India, Kashmir as issued a alert, genocide alert for Kashmir. He issued a genocide alert for Assam. Then he updated that alert because it is now more closer to genocide. So this genocide is taking place from his scholarly perspective of genocide. Genocide is not an event, it's a process. And he has outlined very clearly 10 stages of genocide. And he ranks not just India, globally, what stage a particular genocide is at. And it is on the website. And India is there. So I would suggest that we we identify, or we collect, or we compile existing information about. We don't have to take a report about Indian Muslims published by an Indian Muslim organization. We can just take it from other sources who are saying that. Amnesty International, to Human Rights Watch, to Genocide Watch, to EU, to UN. There are many, many reports. There are international newspaper has covered it very clearly. As subtle as international media can be, even they have come out very openly about all these issues. I think if we only consume it, when I say that Indian Muslims, unfortunately, not all Indian Muslims are active even now. Even those who are active in Indian Muslim community, if we only consume it, it's not going to help. What we have consumed, what we have learned, it has to go to the next door neighbor, to our local politician, to federal politicians, and not just once. If we go to a politician or elected official and give him or her a presentation for 30 minutes and 40 minutes, and we think our job is done, no, it's not done. Because as soon as you leave, somebody might be walking in with a problem even more worse than India. I mean, this also we need to realize there are problems in the world a lot more worse than India or Indian Muslims. People, and if somebody walks in there with that kind of problem, or somewhere else, some poverty issue, or somewhere else, some sex trafficking in the world, I'm talking about US here.
No, I get it, yeah.
In the world, now this congressman has to prioritize, right?
Right.
He can't fix the world. And we can't expect him to leave everything aside and now work on Indian Muslims. So just talking to them for 30 minutes, 40 minutes, once in a while is not going to help. It has to be an ongoing, consistent, sustainable effort for him or her to make it a priority and start learning about it and speak up. So I would say it starts from us, it starts locally. We can analyze Indian politics sitting from London and Washington and Chicago and New York, what's happening in Bengal, what's happening and all that. There is nothing we can do. We can't even vote, we can't even campaign, we can't even send money in Indian politics, what's happening. There is hardly anything we can influence. But
Right.
What we can influence is locally.
Correct.
And we all have limited time. If we are spending it talking about Indian politics, talking about what's happening in India, then we don't have time to talk about what's happening right here in local neighborhoods. So I would say we need to start locally.
Okay. And can I also ask, given the work that you've done for the organization in the aftermath of the Gujarat riots, with the program that happened in New Delhi and in Assam, what is it that organizations like yourself and like ourselves should start and continue to do?
I think if one of our good friend who passed away, may Allah grant him Jannah, Dr. Umar Khalidi, who was with MIT, he had said that if it is, I remember it distinctly, if it is not documented, it did not happen. So I think there is enough documentation happening. But again, if documentation is happening and if we are not aware of it, or if we are aware of it and we are just reading it and just not doing anything about it, it's not going to help. Again, we have to go back with the information as concise as possible with the local politicians, policymakers, so that when we do enough and enough of us will do, for example, when I say enough of us will do, if people in UK do it in UK Parliament, if Canadian Parliament something does, Australian Parliament something does, US Congress somebody does, German Parliament somebody does, Netherlands Parliament somebody does. If this happens on a global level, then obviously it will be an effective, because with all the evidence is this RSS fueled Islamophobia is global now. Right. It is not limited to Indian borders. Right. It is global.
Right.
So if Naeem, if you somehow made UK RSS free, RSS mukt, nothing is going to change in India, because RSS is in US, RSS is in Australia, RSS is in Canada. It has to be a global effort now. It starts locally, but it has to become a global effort.
Indeed. Thank you very much, Rasheed Ahmed. I'm now going to go to Shaheen, and Shaheen, this will actually be the last question, trying to hopefully wrap up our session today. And before I ask you that question, there were a few comments on the chat which speaks about ghettoization, which is about why there are communities where you only have Muslims. Instances of how people from other states in India, having visited Kerala, they were surprised at the level of what is being seen as integration. I think there's quite a few layers to that question, and perhaps the answer is also not necessarily very straightforward. But I think what people also need to realize is there is a lot of institutional issues that actually contribute to a situation like that. When you have a situation where a Muslim wants to rent an apartment, wants to buy a house in an affluent area of a city or a province, and he is denied or she is denied just because of their faith, that is the starting point of the ghettoization. So it's not always necessarily, it's a very convenient thing to say, well, there's this victim complexity, there's this victimhood mentality where you just want to be close to those of your kind. People who want to live in affluent areas, in the desirable parts of the town where there are better infrastructure, are actually being denied that opportunity. And the only place that they can are places where they're not being discriminated against. So I think the answer to that is there are bigger structural issues. Granted, there are many problems associated with it where it's easy to label, to ghettoize, but the primary reason for that is actually institutional. Shaheen, I think the last question for me and on the session today is, you're covering in the documentary Gujarat, but you've also covered what is going on in New Delhi and now in Assam. How right is it to say that actually what happened in Gujarat is a continuation of what happened in New Delhi and in Assam? And what are the similarities that you see in terms of state complicity and the sheer evil of the violence that's being unleashed?
One of the few things is that, see, in Gujarat they had they were taking a revenge for Gotra, like, maybe it's a setup. Gotra is a setup, or maybe it's a tragedy. We can hypothetically say it is a setup because of all the evidence we have, but for some people it might sound like I'm speculating. Anyway, uh, that's why they did all this. Like, it is a post Gotra violence, as we say it in right wing narratives. It's a post Gotra violence which took place in across Ahmedabad and Surat and all across Gujarat, and
So
men, women, and children.
denial of the genocide.
So they take this narrative over there. So they the victims of men, women, and children. What happens in Delhi, like after 18 years, what happens in Delhi, which unfolded in front of my eyes. So I can say it with full confidence over here. They went to people, they butchered Muslim men, and they told Muslim women that we can do anything to you, but we are not doing. There's a warning. So they're giving a warning about it, because there was no point of revenge in Delhi, because the Muslims have not done anything that could trigger an revenge over there. So it was a warning sign. It was, even though I'm not comparing, what we see in Gujarat and what we see in Delhi is that in Delhi, it was a warning to all the people who protested against CAA that, uh, we are we are going to that last level of Hindu Rashtra where everything is controlled by, there's no constitution, there's no basic human rights for you, but you can't protest even the idea of we going over there. You shouldn't even protest. We will reach there, and then we will persecute you violently, mercilessly. But until that, you don't even make an outcry. That was the message that came out of Delhi program. Because and one of the interesting thing is that unlike Gujarat, Muslims had this, because of people in Silambur and Jafrabad where the violence happened. There were ancestors of people who had been who had been victims of several violence in Delhi, Bihar, UP, and all these places. So after 3 days, when you can't call the police were complicit to the riots. They were the rioters. They were the ones who shot down people, and they were the ones who made people with injuries sing national anthem. So they are the writers. You don't have to be very decent over there to call them complicit people. They were bystanders and all kind of that's a denial. That's very reductive. They were the writers who came out and who entered mosque, who entered madrasas, beat black and blue, the imams of the masjids, and they were part of the writers. So uh, what message that Delhi gave, and UP also, what we tend to happen is, like, now we remember three places. Before we only remembered Gujarat and Delhi. Now with collective effort by a lot of people start remembering about Assam. But in between, we forget Muzaffarnagar and UP violence. On uh, just before, like 60 days before Delhi pogrom, there was a massacre in UP where 23 people were killed on the same day, on one day, and they were all killed by police bullets, and the police bullets were fired on their head or the chest. That means they were killed on point blank, with not to disperse any crowd. They were just killed to maintain peace, and that is a peace that they want to have before they enter into a full-fledged genocide. And
The executions, police executions.
Yeah, but at the same time, what we have to understand and we have to admit is that how Muslims have resisted. Muslim didn't stop the protest because there was a genocide and there was this massacre. After 4 hours, 3 people were killed in Kanpur. People came out on the streets again. They were protesting, defying all this police violence. They came out, they protested. Even when people were killed in Northeast Delhi, in the Delhi pogrom, people came out and protested. They didn't stop the protest. They were defying all these fear factors that will come, people, the life will be lost, there will be huge violence. They were ready to resist, and they knew that it was a last stand against the fascism. They stopped the protest because there was a pandemic and it was a social cause to go back to their houses and not spread the virus. And they have the gentle idea that we shouldn't be doing something evil like that to stay in the streets and spread the virus, because it was a global pandemic. And whatever the state is going to do, what kind of violence they can do, even they're going to bomb the ghettos or any areas. If there is a Muslim man or Muslim standing, like Muslim alive, he's going to stand up against this tyrant force. And that's sure, because like I've met people across India. You can see from Gujarat to Delhi, Rajasthan, Kashmir, UP, Assam. We have met people, and I think so all of them have the same anger. All of them have the same fire to fight back. And I think beyond this international advocacy and all, which have not been productive, at least in the case of Kashmir, because we have seen how Kashmiri people have been lobbying and doing all kind of activism and advocacy works outside India, and still they have not they have achieved a lot of attention, but at the same time they couldn't eradicate they couldn't elevate the status of Kashmir. So the same thing is happening with Indians also, but it is going to be a ground level resistance, which we have to wait, watch, and see. But I think Indian Muslims have waken up after the winter last year, and they're going to fight back. It's just documentation that people outside can do, who can help, and who can scrutinize, and who can find the correct narrative, and help us build our history. I think that's what I can say about it.
No, true, and full power to you, Shaheen. What I want to say is, on behalf of Strive UK, we are thankful to you and to your efforts today in showing us a documentary, which, again, I say was uncomfortable but essential viewing for all of us in the country, which was an eye opener to actually what happened. And I stand corrected in the use of the word complicity, especially given that they're the writers themselves. So I'm grateful for that education too. So thank you very much. I want to thank Rasheed Ahmed Saib, who has joined us from the US. Sir, your views and your experiences were very valuable to organizations like us, and quite a lot of people on board who now are asking the most important question: well, our eyes have been opened, and what do we do next? We hope that, inshallah. Sorry, was there something that you wanted to say, sir?
No, when you are done, if you give me a couple of minutes, I just want to.
Yes, of course. No, please go ahead.
I think I'm not saying anything new, but I just want to express my perspective. That is, the Indian Muslim diaspora, meaning Muslims from India living outside India, anywhere, whether it is UK, Canada, Australia, Germany, US, or any other country, especially in the Western democracies where there is a level of freedom of speech and a level of activism, advocacy, policy work can be done. The responsibility on them everybody are responsible, but responsibility of them, I think, unique and urgent and very critical. Why I say that is, what is happening in India, what is RSS, what kind of work they do, the level of Islamophobia they have, the level of organization they have, and the fact that it is an organization predates even Hitler's Germany, It is an ideology that predates Hitler's Nazi and Mussolini's fascism ideology. Even rest of the Muslim community, Muslim Ummah doesn't know about it. And it doesn't mean that I'm not saying they're not interested, they don't care. But I don't think an Egyptian Muslim can understand what's happening in India, who is behind it, what kind of risk or what level of genocide Muslims are in, because they don't know the language, they don't know the history, they don't have the context, they have their own issues. Not Russian Muslims won't understand it. Bosnian Muslims won't understand it. Syrian Muslims don't understand it. Certainly, you can't expect Syrian refugees to understand and do anything about it when their own lives are at stake. So the primary responsibility on this issue falls on Indian Muslims because they are the largest minority, and Indian Muslims happens to be very well-to-do in diaspora, uh, uh, fairly educated. Uh, they have a level of freedom, they can speak, they have access to policymakers. And so the responsibility on Indian Muslim diaspora is huge. And if any Indian Muslim is thinking that there is this huge number of secular Hindus who are fighting it, they are the one who are the right people to fight it. Let them fight it. We will do what we can do from behind. I think all these are has fraught with major risk. I'm not saying that Indian secular non-Muslims not doing anything. In fact, they are doing extremely good work, and they are doing it more than anything out of their conscious, out of their concern about the India, whereas Indian Muslims have to do it because it is their own neck on the line.
Existential.
And if Indian Muslim diaspora does not understand it, does not do their own job, only they are responsible, not Palestinian Muslims, not Syrian Muslims, not UK Muslim, UK living people, Muslims living in UK from other countries, because we have not even reached out to them. Yes, they have their own issues, but they will still work with Indian Muslims if we reach out to them. So I think it is a huge responsibility of Indian Muslim diaspora anywhere they are living. And if Indian Muslims wants to spend their time in building masajids, as good as it is, as must it not be done, or some other work which has to do with good work. I can say about US, because I don't know the facts about Indian Muslims in other countries as good as I know here. Indian Muslims in United States are just around 500,000. And Muslims in United States are about 3.5 million. So Indian Muslims are a fraction of American Muslim community. And if you see, Brother Naim, you may know it, Indian Muslims are disproportionately active in every other work of American Muslim community, whether it is masajids, whether it is Islamic schools, with XYZ, whatever it is. So it's pure, simple maths. We have only 24 hours and we have limited resources. Either you can do, at the risk of somebody calling me, it's so shocking that Rasheed has made a statement. I want to have a disclaimer. I'm not making this statement on behalf of Indian American Muslim Council. This is my personal statement. Let me say this way. I have a very good friend here in Chicago area. and he is a president, or he was a president of a large Islamic center. I used to tell this to him. I think if I am correct, I saw his name. He may be online. He can correct me if I'm wrong. I used to tell him, brother, if you leave your role as a president of this large growing Islamic center, the vacuum will be filled in a month. Some other Muslim from some other country will be available and he will fill. He can do probably I mean, he's a great guy, very good organizer. He would do just fine. He may not be do as good as you may, but the work will go on. The masjid will build.
Yes.
Nothing will stop. But the other person, if he happens to be from Egypt or anywhere else, he simply cannot work on Indian Muslim issues. So I think Indian Muslims, this is the time for Indian Muslims to come home. We need to do our own ghar wapsi and gradually retrieve from other work as good as they are, come back to Indian Muslim work. This is the time. This is the fierce urgency of now that Martin Luther King has said. This is the time. Let me finish my responsibility in a year. I will come back to it. Let me finish this, then I will come back to it. There is no time now. This is it. If you are unable to make a decision now that you want to work towards cause of the Indian Muslims now, it may be too late. So that would be my personal appeal to everybody. I know I talked about masjid and all that. People might think that you're asking me to.
No, we understand your point, Rasheed. It is a sentiment that, even at the risk of also sounding, as you also say, it is a sentiment that we understand, appreciate, and may also say agree that the responsibility and the work is much, much larger than confining the vast expanse of not just our faith, but also existential issues of our community. But I'm very thankful for your time and for sharing your experiences. Jazakallah khair to you and to Brother Shaheen for your time, and to everybody who has joined us on our event today. Again, on behalf of Strive, we thank everybody who has found the time to be part of this, and also deeply apologize for some of the questions that we were unable to take due to the paucity of time. And Ameen, we will continue to have opportunities to speak to each other, to work with each other, and to continue with the movement. And with this, may I say to all, Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Thank you.